Hey everyone, this is Jessica with Well Hello Cookie. Today we are going to be doing a class called Gnome Place Like Home. In your kit, you're going to find your practice sheet, your 4 cookies, sprinkles, 2 noses for the gnomes, your napkin, and 3 bags of icing. So the first thing we're going to do is grab our 3 bags of icing and massage the icing. Now, the meringue usually will separate if the icing has been sitting for a while. So you want to make sure to take about 2 minutes to massage each bag to make sure all the ingredients are mixed back together again. You can pause the video here while you are massaging because you really do want to make sure that there is no discoloration in the bag from the ingredients separating. Once we have our 3 bags nice and massaged, we are going to put these aside for just a second and we are going to grab our practice sheet. We're going to start here today by warming up our hand. So let's grab our green icing and then we're going to also grab our little pair of scissors. When you cut this icing bag, you want to make sure the seam is up and you're going to try to flatten the bag a little bit. This way, while we cut it, it will hopefully make the tip more of a round opening. Remember, you can always cut more. So start off by cutting just a small amount of the tip with your scissors. Once I do this with the bag, I'm going to grab my napkin and then I'm going to test out the icing consistency on my napkin. Sometimes the separation of the icing is still in the tip of the bag, so I try to squirt that out. Then I also do this so I can see what the consistency is of my icing. We're all using a medium consistency today for all 3 bags. So when I apply pressure, the icing comes out. So when I start my line, I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure to get a little icing out to lay on the page. Then I'm going to lift my icing bag up and give continuous pressure so that my lines look even. So then we're going to move on to the next section of the practice sheet. The same idea applies with applying pressure. Now I'm just going to move my wrist up and down while I'm doing this as well. Again, you want to lift the icing up so you can see where it's falling. It's difficult if you have your icing tip close to the paper, so you really want to have that continuous pressure with your hand and lift the icing up so you can see where the icing is falling. Now with my circles, I like to start at the top and then go clockwise on them. This way I can see where the icing is falling. When I do it counterclockwise, there's a point where my hand kind of gets in the way, so that's why I don't go that direction. Circles are probably one of the hardest things to do with royal icing just because it's a lot easier to go to a corner with this kind of icing than it is to go in a circle. So now let me give you time to do that second circle to warm up your hand. And then we can move on to the heart, which is similar to a circle, except you have your 2 points. So you're going to start in the middle, do one side, and then I start in the middle again and do the other side. Now that we're done with our practice sheets, we're going to go ahead and cut open the other 2 bags. So this is where you want to just give it a little massage again and then lay the seam flat and then cut the tip. I always try to grab those plastic tips because they are small and you don't want them to get into your cookie or icing. Then, of course, I'm going to test out the icing, get the initial liquid that might still be in it from mixing the icing together. And then I'm going to go ahead and open my white bag as well. Once all the bags are open, I'm going to make sure I've tested all of them to get out that extra initial liquid. And the first two cookies we're going to work on are the Gnome Cookies. So go ahead and pull those down and then put your napkin aside while we start to get ready to decorate. So we're going to start by putting the green gnome hat on. So we are going to do all the outlines first, and then we will go back in and fill in the spaces where the icing goes. So as you can see, I start from the top and I go to the point, and then I go down to the other side, and then I do like a half smiley to connect the two sides. So I have kind of that dunce looking gnome hat on the top. And then once I've done that outline, I'm going to put those cookies to the side. Still sticking with the green color, we are going to pull the flower down, and we're going to go ahead and do that stem once we have finished off these gnome cookies. So put those aside, pull the flower down. We are going to start from the middle of the flower and go all the way down to where the base of the flower is. The reason we're doing that is because we're going to cover up those two areas with icing, and we want the stem to look as natural as possible. So when I'm doing the stem, I'm applying a little bit more pressure than normal because I want to make a thicker stem. If I was doing this as a custom order, I probably would flood the whole cookie with white first and then put the stem just to give it a little bit more dimension. Then I'm going to go to the leaf, and I'm going to start at the point. Freehanding a leaf, even though this has kind of a cutout, it's a lot better to start from a point where you know, like, okay, this is the leaf tip. I'm going to do a half smiley face because it kind of gives you an idea of how to gauge the top portion of it. We will fill in this leaf later, so leave it like this. So keep that green icing out and pull the mushroom house now. We are going to be working on this next. So you can see on the mushroom house there are two areas of green. You have the chimney that we're going to work on, and then we also have the main part of the house with a little door that we'll have to cut out a space for. So we're going to take our green, and the first thing we're going to do is the little door, because we want to always do the inside of the cookie first and then work our way out. That way with your arm you aren't going to bump the lines if you were to outline it first. So go ahead and make your small door and then outline the body of the house. Then we are going to grab our white icing, and we are going to make the beard on the gnomes. So the beard is pretty simple. It's just an upside down triangle, as you can see here. So we'll grab that white icing. You can test it on your napkin if you'd like to. We're going to push a little bit of icing out before we start, just to make sure like it's not too liquidy. If your icing does feel liquidy, always feel free to stick that into the refrigerator just to let it firm up a little bit. Icing does tend to warm up in your hands. So you'll see here I'm putting my two upside down triangles on my gnomes, which are going to act as their beard. Then I'm going to put them aside and let them dry before we move on to the next section. So we're going to go work on our flower stem. We are going to do the center. You can see here that there's a little bit of sprinkles on it. You can make it small, you can make it larger. I think this time I'm going to make mine a little bit larger. So we're going to make a circle here and fill it in. Once you have filled it in, if you have any points that are sticking up, you can use your wooden scribe. I'm going to use my metal scribe here and kind of clean up my circle. Then when we are done with that, we're going to actually set it aside. You never want to put sprinkles on right after you put the icing because the sprinkles will absorb into the icing because it's wet. So we want to give it like a minute to kind of just get a little firm. So let's go ahead and grab that mushroom house and do the outline of that house. So I'm going to push my mushroom house aside and I'm going to grab my flour. Again, you can see here on my first flour, I put just a little bit of sprinkles. I have made this again and I actually like it when it's thicker. So I am going to really pour on the white sprinkles on my center of the flour. So I'm going to do that by holding it over the bowl, sprinkling some sprinkles on and let it fall into the bowl just to kind of keep it clean. Once I have that good and layered on there, I will set my sprinkles aside and we are going to finish the bottom of the flower by outlining the area where the vase would be. Again, I go over the stem a little bit to give it that effect that it's sitting inside of the vase. I make a small smiley face in doing it, and then I outline the rest of the cookie. Once we are done with outlining the flower, we're going to grab our gnome and outline the last piece of it with our yellow while we have it out. Now we're going to grab our white icing and we are going to grab our gnomes. We are going to go ahead and fill in their beards. The reason why we fill in the beards, it's so that if we do the middle of the cookie, then later we're able to fill in the next two sections of the cookie, so it reduces on time. Then you can use your scribe to get all the corners, flatten out your icing. I always go in a circular motion, and then sometimes I even will pick up the cookie and shake it if I'm trying to get it to lay flat. So then go on and do the second cookie as well. So then let's push our gnome cookies to the side, and we're actually going to grab the mushroom house cookie. So keep your white icing, but also grab your yellow icing. We're going to use both of them now to do the mushroom roof. So as you can see in this example of the mushroom house, I have a mushroom house roof that is yellow with these white little dots. This is called a wet on wet technique, where you put the little dots on the icing while the icing is wet, and since they're the same consistency, they kind of meld together to make a flat surface. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and flood in that mushroom roof with the yellow. Once you have this cookie nice and flooded, I take my scribe and pick it up and just kind of work the icing all the way around. I want to make sure that I haven't missed any gaps or holes in it. Then sometimes too, like I said, I shake that cookie to really make sure it's nice and flat in terms of the surface. So now I'm going to grab my white icing bags. And again, this is your cookie. So you decide where you want those creative dots on your mushroom. So I'm going to kind of follow the pattern. I'm putting 3 in one corner, 3 in another, and maybe 1 or 2 in the other corner. If you feel like your icing is a little raised, you can take your scribe at the end of this and kind of work that icing down in a small circular motion. You want to watch that tip because if it touches some of the yellow, you want to wipe that off so it doesn't kind of ruin that white circle. While we still have that white icing out, go ahead and fill in your little keyhole door for the gnome's house. And then when we're done, we can push that to the side. And then we are going to go ahead and grab the flower pot. We are going to fill in that yellow base part. And so grab your yellow, grab your green, grab your white. We're going to need all 3 of the colors because we're going to really work on this flower for a little bit. So grab your yellow, fill in the bottom of the vase, use your scribe to kind of clean up your edges once you filled in the flower. Next, we are going to work on our leaf. So go ahead and fill this in. Now fill in the whole leaf. We will go back once it's dried and crusted over a little bit and put a little line in there for dimension. But you really want this flat right now. The reason why we haven't started the top of the flower is because I was trying to give it a little bit of time for this to dry. So the next area we're going to do is the petals on the flower. I am going to start with this bottom petal and I'm just going to make a rounded shape that looks like a actual petal flower, and I will continue to do this in making 5 separate petals. Some people would use the same line just to give it dimension. I'm going to make them look like individual petals instead of sharing a line. Once I've completed this, I'm going to start by filling in the petals. So we're doing the same technique to maximize our time. So we're going to fill these 3 petals first, allow those to dry, and then we'll come back in and fill in the next 2 petals. Because they're not side by side, that means in case they did end up running or touching, they won't meld together and they'll keep that dimension of the flower. Then when we're done with our flower, we're going to pull our 2 gnomes back down and we are going to start by filling in the bottom piece, the yellow piece of this gnome. You need your 2 noses as well, as we're going to put those on after we do the green hats. Our yellow is really getting a workout right now, so we're going to make sure to push the icing down to the bottom of the bag. And then we are going to fill in this area. Once you are done filling in this area, make sure you use your scribe and use it in a circular motion to kind of spread the icing out and make sure it's flat. You also can pick up the cookie and shake it once you're done filling in this area. Once you've filled in both areas, if just to flatten it out, I'm going to pick mine up and shake it a little bit here to make sure it's smooth. Then we're going to fill in the green hats on the top. Once we've filled in the green hats, we are then going to apply the noses. So go ahead and keep those close. So the same thing that you did for the other two areas, you're going to do now by flooding the interior, taking your scribe, working your scribe in the icing to smooth it out. Also shake it if you need to. Then we are going to put icing on the back of the noses and apply them. So let's go ahead, get this hat flat. Once you feel like the hat is flat and smooth, you're going to grab a nose. You're going to apply a little bit of the white icing onto the back of the nose, and then you're going to drop it between the hat and the beard. Once we are done with that, we're going to put our gnomes aside and we're going to grab this mushroom house. We're going to take our green and we're going to fill in the chimney, and then we're going to fill in the base of the house as well. So as soon as we're done with that house, we're going to go ahead and grab our white flour. We're going to fill in the last two areas of the petals that need to be filled in. That way our flower is complete. Then we are going to take our green icing and we are going to do our details on the stem. The details I do on the stem are small and just to give it a little bit more dimension. So I'm going to take my green and draw a line on the stem to give it a raised look, and then I also am going to draw a middle line in the leaf to give it some separation. Before we wrap up our class, I'm going to show you how to make one more thing. So let's grab our practice sheet and also our yellow icing. We're going to make a little heart on our mushroom house like this. We do that by applying pressure in a small ball and then dragging our bag down. A pressure on the small ball and then drag the bag down, which makes like a little heart or even a button nose if you're making an animal. So we're going to grab that mushroom house and I'm going to put one in the corner, and then I'm also going to put a little knob on the door. Thank you so much for joining our class today with Well Hello Cookie in partnership with Team Climb On for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We are so glad you're here. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch our next class. Thanks and have a wonderful day.